Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hi.
Gerry. How are you?
Okay.
The end of a workday, huh?
Yes, it's been overcast and cold wind all day again. This is just not Hawaii out here anymore.
Well,
It's all
Toronto
your fault.
will be 56 degrees tomorrow, so it's not
Oh,
Toronto here either. That's pretty nice.
yeah. Hmm.
Today on the podcast, we're in Hawaii talking with an American legend, perhaps the greatest ever USA high school runner, winner of 11 NCAA championships. I could spend the whole hour talking about the accomplishments. One of only two people to beat Steve Prefontaine in an NCAA championship. We're going to talk all about running. A great career, perhaps one of the most dominant careers in running in the 1960s. We're going to talk running today. Welcome on the podcast, Gerry Lindgren. Hi, Gerry.
Aloha.
Aloha. Gerry, let's talk from your early memories of your origin story as a runner. How did you first get involved in running and racing?
When I was in junior high school, I started thinking about what was my life going to be. And I decided maybe I could make something of my life in a sport. And so I decided I was going to be a football player. And in junior high school, I went out for football and lasted about 5 minutes. And then I was hit broadside and I had a slight concussion. And that was the end of my football dreams. The football coach steered me towards basketball. He said maybe I'd be okay in basketball in the winter. And of course, I was uncoordinated as well, as small as I was. So I lasted less than a day at basketball too. The basketball coach told me maybe I should try baseball in the spring, but I couldn't throw or catch. I was so uncoordinated, I couldn't do anything. So I didn't last there either. But the baseball coach did steer me over to track and field because he said nobody ever gets cut from track and field. And so I went out for track at my junior high school. But I was so uncoordinated trying to run, I'd fall down all the time. If I went out to run, I'd come in all bloody. And so the coach of the track group got me. He had a friend that was a distributor for the evening newspaper, and he got me a paper route near the school that had 16 customers. And rather than turn out for track, I'd go and pick up these papers and run, deliver 16 papers, and then I'd go back to the school where I was supposed to run with the track team. They were already gone by the time I got there, or they would tell me that they would gone up to Rogers High School, and I should run up there to meet them. And sure enough, if I ran up there, though they're not here, so I go back, and by then everybody's gone. So I never did get to. I did get to run in a couple of the meets, and everybody else in the longest race is where they put me, but everybody else had finished the race already and got their sweats on and were waiting for me in the bus when I was still running the 660-yard dash. I was fat, uncoordinated, and slow.
Wow. So you were last.
I was very last, yes.
Yeah. Oh, when did things start to change?
I graduated from the junior high and I went to Rogers High School. And I heard about cross country, and people were saying how cool cross country was. So I decided I'd turn out for cross country, and everything would change, I hoped. But all of the people that were turned out for cross country had just come from the junior high school and nobody had ever really run before. So the coach couldn't just send us out to run or we just walk. So he kept us for about 3 weeks on the track doing quarter-mile intervals. Right away, I found out that I couldn't keep up with anybody on the team. I was always dead last. And I hated running because I couldn't keep up with anybody. It was just ridiculous. The other people that were trying to get on the cross country team, they didn't want me to run either because I was too uncoordinated and I kept falling down. And so they started hitting me and kicking me and making my life miserable while I tried to run around the track. One day at the last interval, I was so angry that I couldn't keep up with everybody that when the coach started the interval, I sprinted like mad into first place and around the track and all the way down to the back stretch. I was leading, and then all of a sudden I just hit the wall. That was the worst feeling I've ever had. And everybody came running by me, and I ended up dead last again. So I decided I was going to quit the team. But the next morning, before I could talk to the coach, came and took me out of class. He wanted to have a little talk to me. And he said to me, Gerry, you may not realize this, but you have an opportunity that very few people ever get. And I wondered, what is he talking about? He says, when you took the lead, everybody on the team ran faster because they didn't want such a wimp ahead of them. He said, when everybody gets in shape, you'll probably not make varsity. You'll probably not get a letter. You'll go nowhere with this sport. But now, when everybody's out of shape, you can make the team better by being a rabbit. For me, it was mind-boggling because he said I should just forget all about me and instead try to make the team better. And
Wow.
the next day when we had our running session, we were going to run on the short course. The first time we were going to run off through this short course. It's about a mile and a half and come up back to the school to finish. When he shot off the gun to start him, I took off like mad, and for about a half a mile, I kept ahead of everybody.
Right.
But then everybody came by, and oh, I was so tired, I could hardly make it back. I was a terrible runner. But everybody started complaining to the coach because I would make every workout into a race. Why doesn't
Right.
he slow down? uh, Before our season started, we ran that short course 3 times. And the second time, I stayed ahead of some of the people. And on the third time, I came in first. And then the coach set up a practice meet against the neighboring high school. When we started that race again, I just took off like mad and I was in the lead. And when our first runner from our school came running by me, I tucked in behind him and I ran the whole race right behind that guy.
Okay.
Several people from the other school ran by us, but that didn't make any difference because I was just trying to keep up with our best runner.
Sure.
And I ended up running second for them. The first 7 would get to run on varsity, so I actually would get to run on varsity. And I was so elated because I had made varsity that I went up to the coach expecting him to pat me on the back and tell me what a good job I'd done.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, if that's the kind of a runner you want to be, I'm not sure I want you on my team. He says, when those other guys from the other school went by me, I didn't do anything to make their race better. I just sat there. I didn't even help our own guy because I didn't run by him. I just sat behind him and let him do all the work. He says, if that's the kind of runner you want to be, I'm not sure I want you on my team. And of course, it broke my heart. That's the last time I ever let anybody pass me without a hard uh, race.
That
um,
is amazing. I can see it from your running style and watching the videos of your races. The effort that you would put in to be a front runner or to pass people or to fight people off passing you. That is an amazing origin story. And how did that season go?
Because I was there as a rabbit, so to speak, I never did want to win a race. My whole running career, I did not want to win. I expected the good people to run by me in the end, but they hardly ever did. And I was really angry with myself because I would run as hard as I could, trying to get the other people to run hard, and I started winning races. And Coach saw how disappointed I was, and he took me aside again. He says, sometimes to help other people, you have to win races. People
Right.
look to the winner and they want to be like that person. Winning is not a bad thing. He had to tell me that several times before I ever got over the idea that I should win. But I ended up getting fourth place in the all city cross country meet, and I got to run at the state, and I ended up finishing second in the state meet. Uh, so I was suddenly pretty well set on being a runner.
Yeah. You've talked in other places about the idea of karma, of helping people. And now I understand that a little bit better. At that point, with your conversations with your coach, with your accepting that you're going to run as hard as you can and sometimes win, what was your outlook of what running was for you? Was it just going to be something you did there in school? Did people start saying, you're going to do this after you graduate from high school? What was the outlook? I mean, you started setting records.
Mm. Oh, from the very beginning, I was there to be the rabbit, and
Yeah.
I was never there to help myself or to run well. And in fact, I never did in my whole running career think that I could win. I was only there to make everybody running good. And darned if they didn't quit after the season was over. Then I had to make a decision because everybody stopped running and winter was coming on. But I decided I would have to keep running because I wasn't as good as anybody else. And for me to be able to stay ahead of them, I would have to work harder than everybody else. So I kept running all through the winter. And we had a nasty winter in Spokane. At one time, I got into an avalanche and almost died up there trying to run through the winter.
Wow. How much were you running, do you think?
We didn't know. I would just go out and run. It wasn't until later on when Ron Clark was writing his book on running,
Hmm.
he asked me how many miles a day did I run. And that was a concept I had never thought of. And I didn't know. So he went and he asked my coach, how many miles a day does Gerry run? He had no idea either because we never thought of that. So he tried to figure out how many by putting together what a typical week would be of my running. And we came up with about 50 miles a day, 55 or something. And he said, no, that's impossible. So in his book, he put 25 to 35 miles a day. And that kind of stuck. But I was running probably close to that because
Yeah.
early in my cross country running, when I decided I had to be the rabbit, I knew that I wasn't as good as everybody else. So I knew I would have to do more work than other people. So I started getting up early in the morning and running 5 or 6 miles before school.
Right.
Then I started getting up about midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning and I'd go for a 10 miler to get extra miles in. And then I'd run the regular workout with the cross country team. So I was getting in about 25 to 35 miles a day. That's when this came out. We put that because I was running 3 times a day, just trying
Yeah.
to be as good as other guys.
Yeah, that's what the writing says. 200 miles a week was normal for you, which is There can't have been many other people putting in that much work and that much mileage. But what about the record? The first time you set a record, a national record, what goes through your mind when you're at the such an elite level and your attitude is you want to help people, but you're accomplishing things no one else has ever done?
The first time I did a national record was I was a miler in high school,
Yeah.
and when I was a senior in high school, Dennis Carr held the American high school record at 408.3. In my state meet, I thought maybe I could get under this 408.3, and that was the goal. But when I was warming up, somebody came running across the track to tell me that Jim Ryan from Kansas had just ran 406.6, and I was shattered. No way could I run 406.6. I was thinking maybe 408 I could do, but I won the race anyway, and darned if I didn't come in 406 flat and get the national high school record. But still, I never thought of myself as being good because I was only there to help other people.
That is
I
an
didn't
amazing
think
story.
about things like that. Later on in the summer, I went down to Jamaica and ran a American record for the 3 mile. Then they wanted me to come back and run the mile. And so I did, and I didn't think I would have anything left. So I didn't try to get out in front. I just ran behind everybody for 3 laps. And then on the last lap, I sprinted out and went into the lead and ran. I had about 200 meters to go yet. And suddenly I got to thinking, these are international runners. These are big people. I shouldn't be leading. So I stopped and waited for them to catch up and
Oh
start
my
passing
gosh.
me. And I caught back up to all of them and finished second in 401.5. But I could have done a lot better if I wasn't so stupid.
Let's say 30, 35 years after your high school career ended, you still had, in every distance from 1,500 meters to 10K, you had a top 10 ever all time high school performance. In every distance, from
Hmm.
10K down to 1,500 meters, your times lasted. Your 2 mile record must have lasted, I don't know, some of these
Hmm.
lasted decades, the records
Yeah.
that you were setting. And all of this time, with the high mileage and 3 times a day workouts, what were you running your training in? What kind of shoes did you wear?
When I first started, I was very poor and I couldn't afford shoes. One of the girls got new tenny runners, and she gave me her tenny runners, and they fit. So I was running in tenny runners until the bottoms fell off. And then one of my fellow runners, he had a size 13 and a half foot, but he'd worn out the toe. So he gave me his shoes, and I could wear those because I was nowhere near the toe anyway. So I ran in those for about 6 months. Finally, I was afforded a pair of Adidas running shoes that were supposed to be real running shoes, a ROM, I think they were called. So I ran in those until the bottoms fell out. But shoes were always a problem when I first started because I could go through a pair of shoes in 2 weeks if I ran a lot.
Yeah.
I started running long things, especially in the summertime when I didn't have to go to school. I get up early in the morning, way before the sun, and I try to be 20 miles out of. I'd run to Mount Spokane, which was about 47 miles away from where I live, and I'd run up Mount Spokane, and then I'd run back home again. So those were pretty hard days, but I got so I could run that far, and it was always easy for me.
Wow. What about injuries? Did ever something happen that you had to not run a day? Were you ever injured?
Oh yes, when I first went out for track, there was a kid that was a senior at our school that was pretty good. And I'd take off like mad, and on my last lap of the mile, he'd catch me and usually beat me. And finally, one time I beat him. But then during the next week, when I was running around the track, all of a sudden my foot hurt really bad. And I had gotten a stress fracture in one toe, hairline fracture.
Uh-huh.
And I had to stop. That was the end of my season. The Rogers guy that I beat ended up going to run in the state track meet, but I couldn't run because I would have the stress fracture, and so I was off until summertime. Then I had some good races in the summer, but it wasn't until the next year in track that I got to run the mile again. And this time, early in the season, I got another stress fracture. So I had to lay off and I couldn't run at all. I was able to finally start running again just before the end of the season. I ran in the last dual meet, and you have to place in the top four to go on to the city meet, and I just happened to finish fourth. So I got to run in the city meet, but only the top three went to the by district meet, and sure enough, I finished third. So then I got to go to by district, but only the top two got to go to state, and sure enough, I got second. And then I got to run in the state meet, and I was able to beat everybody just barely. I just barely beat one of the other guys, very close. But then Bill Bowerman down at Oregon was putting together a summer meet, and he was inviting all of the milers, the state champions from California and Oregon and Washington to run, and also some others that were good. And we were all invited to come down and run it off in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to that one, and just like normal, I take off like mad, and people try to pass me, and I wouldn't let anybody pass. And it came down to the very end, and Tracy Smith from California was trying to get by me, and I just barely held him off and ran that race in what was my time? 4:12, I think, or I can't remember. Suddenly it's got my mind. Yeah, but it was one of the best times in the country. Then on the trip back to Spokane, my whole world was shattered because I'd always thought of myself as wimpy and unable to do well. And suddenly I had the best time in the country for the mile.
Wow. How
It
did
really
you,
messed
how,
with my
yeah,
brain.
how did you deal with that?
It messed with my brain for some time. I had to try to put it out of my mind and say I was just lucky that day. I'm not that good.
What was the relationship and how were people in those days? You were then competing when you went to Jamaica, when you went to this multi state track meet. These were people you didn't know personally. What was it like in these high elite level races? Was there camaraderie? Was there nervousness among people? What was it? Do you remember what it was like?
I remember like it was yesterday. For me, it was extreme nervousness. Oh, I had trouble holding my bladder. I was so nervous. It was terrible. But when the gun went off, I'd always just take off like that because I wasn't there to win the race. I was there to make other people run better. So I always took the lead. I always ran my heart out. Didn't care if I died at the end or whatever happened because I expected to die at the end or get past. But I had to do everything I could to make whoever was going to beat me run better. That
Run
was
their best.
my
Yeah.
calling in life.
Yeah. How did it transition then for you to go pick where you were going to university? You had a double major in university, right?
Yes.
You studied Russian
I,
language and psychology. How
I
did you get recruited or pick and how did you afford college? How did all that work?
when I was running well, I naturally wanted to go to Oregon. That was all the big, good runners go to Oregon. And so that was my choice. And I wrote letters to Bill Bowerman and sent him my transcript and everything, and he never would talk to me. It was because he was a good friend of Blueberry at Washington State, and Blueberry wanted to get me. So Bowerman said he wouldn't try to recruit me unless I was going to go someplace other than Washington State. I didn't know that they'd made this arrangement, but Bowerman would have nothing to do with me, and Washington State was close. So if it didn't work out, I wouldn't be far away from home.
Sure.
So
What
I
kind of student
decided
were?
on Washington State that way.
How hard was school? How easy was school for you as a high school student? What was your
Um,
academics like?
I wasn't that smart or that good in school. I had never been any good at school because in my home life there was no emphasis on education at all. My dad was alcoholic and he had a lot of strict rules that he would beat us to a pulp for no reason at all.
Oh my.
And it was like a little Vietnam for me and my brothers.
Wow.
And
Did you have anyone support? Was there any family that came to your track meets? Did any of your family
no,
watch you?
not
No.
not support, but as I started running better, people started coming to the track meets, and pretty soon the stands got pretty full when I was
Yeah.
a junior and senior.
Yeah, I
Huh.
imagine. Yeah. Okay, so you get to Washington State. What was it like?
In '64, there was an Olympic team, and I made the team. So when I got back from the Olympic team, the fall semester had already started. So I didn't get to start until the spring semester. And by then, everybody had made friends, and their circles were pretty well settled. And I was a complete outcast. I was a freak. People were afraid to talk to me because I had a very big reputation already.
Yeah.
And so they thought I was superhuman or something. And
Well,
so I was all by myself.
it seems like you were. Yeah. We'll go back and
Uh,
talk about your Olympic experience for 1964. But
uh.
did you have a roommate at college?
They had me rooming in an old dormitory with one other guy that was a distance runner at
Hmm.
Washington State. But he had a girlfriend that lived off campus, and so he spent all of his time off campus with the girlfriend. And I
Right.
was all alone.
Wow.
And in this old dormitory, they had heating from came through pipes underground from
Hmm.
the heat plant, and they'd turn on this heat during the daytime, but about 9 o'clock at night they turned off the heat, and the radiator would start banging real loud,
Right.
bang, and it'd go on for about an hour and a half. And in the morning, about 5 o'clock, they'd turn on the heat again, and the same thing would happen. And it was terrible. Finally, I was only there for maybe a month, and I decided, no, I'm not going to take this. I was just so alone, so I was going to go home. And I did come to tell the coach goodbye because I'm going home. And he found out that the guy was living with the girl and he wasn't there, and so he quickly jumped me into another dormitory with another senior from the team, and worked out a lot better there because he was there without a girlfriend.
Were you running that same mileage then when you were there as a
Yes,
freshman?
yeah. I would get
Yeah.
up in the morning and run in the morning before class and before breakfast, and then I would run with the team in the afternoon, and then I'd get up about 1 o'clock in the morning and go for another 10 miles just to make sure I was getting in the miles I needed to get in. Yeah.
Right. Let's go back to the 1964 Olympics trials. You had been a miler, a 2 miler, 3 miler, setting national records and the best in the country for high school at those distances. What was your experience with the Olympic trials and then the Olympics?
Okay. As soon as my senior year was up, my coach wanted to see what I could do for longer distances.
Hmm.
And so he got me invited to the Compton Invitational, which was at Compton Junior College. It was one of the biggest races in the world. They would get people from all over the world to come to this race. It was a 5K, and I had no idea how far 5K was. So I got in this race, and of course, when the gun goes off, I take off like mad. And Bruce Kidd from Canada, he used to have the high school world records in the 2 mile until I broke them in indoors that winter. His idea was that he took the lead and then he would go slow and then fast and slow and fast and wear everybody out. But I didn't know that. And as soon as he tried to go by me, I held him off. He tried again to go by me and I held him off again. And the third time he gave me one heck of an elbow right in my gut. Oh, it hurt. And he got by me, but I couldn't let people just go by me. And so I ran by him, and he elbowed me in the other side with his as I ran by him. And so every lap for 10 laps, I was worried more about Bruce Kidd hitting me than I was about the pace or what I was doing. And we got done with 10 laps. Bruce Kidd suddenly ran out of energy, and he finished the race dead last.
Wow.
And I got through the 11th lap, and I had the lead. And suddenly they shot off the gun for the end of the race, the last lap, and I was still in the lead. So I took off, started my sprint, and suddenly I started thinking, just like I had in the mile in Jamaica.
What am I doing here?
What am I doing here? And so I stopped and waited for everybody. And when they all went by me, I took off after them again. And I got by everybody, but three of them I couldn't quite catch. Ended up fourth. And 13:44 was an outstanding time for college at that time. But I had no idea. The only thing that bothered me is that I got beat. And I hadn't been beaten in a long time. And I felt bad. The coach found out that there was a 10K, but it was only 4 days after the 5K. And he took me to Corvallis, Oregon for a 10K 4 days later.
Was that at the university? Was that at the university track?
Yeah, it was at Oregon State University.
Yeah.
Yeah. He told me just to stay with the leader, and at the 4 mile mark, just to sprint a lap to see what would happen. The one guy was out ahead of everybody, and I just stayed right with him until fourth mile came up, and at the 4 mile mark, I sprinted a lap and got a big lead. And all the way to the finish, I just kept on going as hard as I could, and I won. But then afterwards, I had cramps. I got cramps terrible bad all night, dry heaving. Oh, it was terrible. Promised myself I'd never run another one of these 10Ks. They were awful.
Do you think, was it dehydration or just muscle acid? Do you have any idea?
I think it was because I had run the fast 5K and I hadn't given myself time to recover.
Sure, right.
Yeah. But, I felt terrible. Then the next race was the AAU National Championships in New York City. And I ran a 5K there, and I finished second to Bob Schul, who had a devastating kick in the last lap, and just unbelievable how fast he can finish. I finished second, and the top two of the AAU qualified to run in the USA versus Russia track meet. So I qualified to run in the 5K.
Where was that?
The Russian meet was in the Los Angeles Coliseum that year.
Right. Is Lindgren, is your heritage Russian?
No, the heritage is Swedish.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. How was the experience there running? People listening to this, people who are running in the 60s and 70s know we used to have dual meets with Russia. We don't do that anymore. What was that like? Was it apparent that this was an international meet and all the importance of the country's honor and politics? Was that something you were aware of?
I was very aware of it. The coach of the American team was Sam Bell. And he was the head track coach at Oregon State University. And he had seen me run the 10K where I sprinted after 4 miles and won the race. So he asked me to switch to the 10K rather than the 5K because he said nobody American had never been able to keep up with the Russians. They called us lazy Americans because we could win the short races, but when it came to the longer races where you had to be tough, America was not good.
Right.
I didn't want to run 10K. I remembered how terrible it was. But because a national honor was at stake, I agreed to go run the 10K. So there were 6 weeks before this Russian meet, and the coach would meet me twice a week on the track, and he'd try to get me ready so that I could run a real sprint at 4 miles. He read someplace that the Russians did this. At 4 miles, suddenly they'd sprint, and that's what I would have to be able to do.
Right.
He knew the Russians would beat me because they were internationally some of the best in the world. But what he wanted me to do, or what they wanted me to do, was to just be able to stay with the Russians when they did their sprint lap. And then I could drop off and die. They'd probably lap me at least once, and I could expect that. But for a while, I could just build this lazy America image by staying with the Russians at 4 miles. I trained on the track running 3/4 mile runs, 70, then I'd run 60 the second lap, and then 70 again. It was awful training, and after I get done every day, I was so tired I could hardly run home. But when it came time for the Russian meet, I went down there, and maybe I thought I could do that. That was the goal.
And how'd it go?
When the race started, I tucked in behind Russians. The other American dropped back immediately. And after the race, I asked him, why did you drop back at the beginning? He says he knew he couldn't beat the Russians. Why run hard? But I stayed with the Russians for about 4 miles. And as they got near 4 miles, I tightened up and I got ready. And this is going to happen any minute. This is going to happen. And right before the 4 mile mark, one of the Russians moved up ahead about 10 yards. And the other one right ahead of me, but suddenly he tripped just a little bit and took an extra step. And I was so wound up and ready to go, I panicked. He's going. I ran around him and sprinted. And I caught the front Russian and ran by him. And now it was time to sprint the 1/4 mile. Now I had to try to go while they passed me.
Right.
And so I took off and I came through the end of the sprint lap, but the Russian hadn't gone by me yet. So I couldn't slow down. I had to try to do a second one. And he still didn't go by. So a third one. And I was getting so terribly tired that I made a gesture to the head coach who was standing on the side of the track. I said, how far behind is he? And he yelled at me, you got 120 yards. I knew that wasn't true because I could hear him behind me. Because when my feet were off the ground, I could hear the sound of the spikes crunching on the ground. So I knew he was 5 or 10 yards back, but I wanted to know if he was going to go by me. Hurry up and go by me. I thought they were both running together right there behind me. It turns out that the reason for the sound of the spikes is because the sound didn't get back to my ears until my feet were off the ground. It was my own spikes I was listening to. That's because I didn't know what I was doing. And I kept trying to run. I almost fell down like 3 times. I thought, oh, when the Russians see this, they'll go by me for sure because they know I'm dead. But I kept trying and kept going. And suddenly they shut off the gun, or they rang a bell, meaning this was the last lap of the race. So I was going to finish in the same lap as the Russians. I was so happy because I had actually done better than I ever thought I would do. And I got to thinking maybe one of the Russians isn't right behind the other one. Maybe I could beat one of them. So I was trying to run as hard as I could. I came down the front stretch, hoping I could stay ahead of at least one of them. And I went through the tape first, and I couldn't believe it. I won. And I looked back down the track, and there was nobody there. I
Wow.
said, this can't be.
That's amazing. That's got to be one of the most overachieving, exceeding everyone's expectations
Yeah.
races. Wow. So the
Huh.
Coliseum, that wasn't a cinder track then, was it?
Yeah, it was clay.
Clay
It was
track.
a clay
Wow.
track, yeah. And it had been chewed up pretty bad because the 10,000 meters was one of the last events of the day, of the first day. And it was really hard running because there's all kinds of holes from people running and sprinting and doing so many different events before me. It was a tough going, really.
Yeah. Did that change your life?
No.
Just be that's an that is big national news. I
Wrong.
just yeah okay.
I was lucky. I knew I wasn't that good. I figured it was hot in the Coliseum. It was like
Ah,
95 degrees on the track. And I think I was just lucky that they got tired. They got from the heat. And I wasn't that good. My time just barely made the Olympic qualifying standard. So it
and
wasn't that good. I was still a whole minute behind the best runners.
and
So it,
just let me just say, Jerry, they didn't run in 95-degree heat their best times. For we
yeah.
do have to put
Hmm.
this in perspective.
Yeah, that's true.
Then at Washington State, you were having success both in cross country and track at the championship level. In fact, people can read about your accomplishments and the times. You have a great memory of these races. Just in general, a lot of your wins of 3 mile and 6 mile championships, you would win by 5, 10, or more seconds. A lot of your
Hmm.
races did not have a close finish. They were more like this Russian with you breaking the tape and it seeming like nobody was behind you.
Yes.
But generally, you
Oh,
weren't aware of how far behind people were going. You were just focused on going, huh?
yes. That's the thing about when you lead in a race, you have no idea what is going on behind you. No idea. So I would just take off and run my race and hope I could help people. And when it came to the end, there wasn't anybody there. Sometimes I was so angry because these guys could beat me easy. I'm not that good, but they wouldn't.
That's probably not everybody else's opinion, but I certainly understand that.
I
Let, let
know.
me let me ask you let me ask you about two races that everybody listening to this will be able to go and watch because they can easily find them on YouTube. And I'll ask you just about these two races. There's so many things to talk about, but let me just bring up the 2 mile race. See if you recall the details with Frank Shorter, Marty LaCouri, Steve Prefontaine. This was at the end of the decade, 1969, but it is a good race that people can watch your running style. It's on YouTube in black and white. Do you remember that race?
Oh, definitely. Very closely, I remember that race.
There
Pre,
was a
this
lot
was,
of back and forth passing with you and Prefontaine. It was a great
yes,
race to watch.
yeah. First off, I got pre into running.
Really?
I had friends 15 miles up the coast in Reedsport, and their son had made the regional softball team. But one of his friends was Pre, and Pre was very despondent because he was cut from the team, and he had a big head. And this guy was up, afraid that Pre might try to hurt himself because he didn't make the team. And so I told the kid I would run down to Coos Bay and try to cheer up the kid. So I ran down to Coos Bay, found his house, knocked on the door, and Pre answered. And he said, "You're Gerry Lindgren." I've seen you on television. You look a lot bigger on television. You're just a wimp. You're you're smaller than me. And I hadn't gotten his word in. He said, I'm bigger than you. I'm going to start running. I can kick your ass. I'm going to kick your ass. And I just turned around and ran back up the highway. He didn't need any encouragement.
Yeah, he just needed to see. He once he met you and said he thought you were superhuman, and he said, "But you're shaped just like a human."
Yeah. He used to ask me questions about running all the time while he was coming up through high school. And every time I'd go down to Oregon to run in a meet, I'd have to spend a half an hour talking with Pre about the things that were bugging him.
He couldn't run the distance. I don't know if anybody could run the distance training that was normal for you.
No, I couldn't run it when I first started, but after a while, if you just keep going it, I had a hard time for a while, but finally my body gave up and said, well, if they're going to do it, yeah, and it started
Do you
letting me do it. But
do you
it fought me
think you?
for a long time.
Yeah. Could you talk about a couple of those things that you would talk with Pri about? What were the conversations about the running challenges and things he wanted to find out from you?
Okay, he said that he wanted to win, and he was afraid he wouldn't win, and he didn't want to run if he couldn't win. And I told him there's a lot better things than winning. If you are the best you that you can be, and you just do as level best as you can, doesn't make any difference whether you win or not because you tried your best. I used to tell him all kinds of different things like this.
Do you think his
He
attitude changed from your
No,
ideas?
I didn't think it did. I didn't like the guy at all because he was so arrogant and his ego was so enormously big. Most people didn't like Pre, but the ego helped him because that was why he could run so good is because he had the big ego.
Yeah, it was driven.
Hmm.
Well, what about that race? Do you remember that race? Because it's just fascinating
Yes,
to watch. I don't know if Marty LaCory had some training issues. Shorter and LaCory were not in the race at all. This was a two-person
right.
race, although there were four on the track, and it was a great battle.
Yes, they expected me to go out like I always do. So the first lap I didn't go out on purpose just to shake everybody up. But then they were going terribly slow, and so I figured I might as well go, and I took off. For a while, it looked like I could get away from everybody, but then Pre wasn't going to have any of that. He was just out of high school. That was the first time I raced him. He decided he was going to give me a race. He caught up to me and actually passed me, and I had to pass him back up. It was here in Honolulu at Punahou School that they had the race. It was a dirt track, and there was one place stretch of about 30 yards that had loose dirt on the back stretch. So with Pre giving me so much problem and trying to get ahead of me all the time, every time I come just before this loose place, I'd sprint. And Pre behind me would start sprinting, but when he started sprinting, he was coming into the loose stuff, so he would have to really work his head to get through that loose place. And I would coast through the loose stuff and then
This
take
is
off again.
I love this micro strategy and tactics of the surface. That's
Sure.
fantastic. That's great. You won by almost 3 seconds. You had
Yes.
a very strong finish as usual and won that. It's a great race. When I put this podcast out, I'll put a link to the video so everybody can watch it. The other race I
Yeah.
was just going to mention, and I don't know if the whole race is there, is when you set the world record with Billy Mills and it was
Mm.
judged a time tie.
Oh, yes. Okay. In that race, the NCAA had decided that none of the NCAA athletes could run because
Right.
they were going to show the AAU that they were the big cheese. I didn't know that they were boycotting or making the other athletes boycott because I was only a freshman. I wasn't eligible to run for the school yet, and nobody said a word to me. And when I was coming back from one of the races I got to run in California, a reporter on the plane came down by my seat. He says, "Are you going to run in the AAU meet?" And I said, "Well, yeah, of course." I didn't know anything about anything, and he left me alone, and no big thing. And the next morning, in the newspapers all over the country, Lindgren defies NCAA.
Oh my
My
God.
God. And right away, the coach from Washington State calls me, and he said, "What the hell's the matter with me? they're using you as a puppy dog.
Yeah,
If
in
you
the
run that
politics.
race, you'll never run another college race." And then the athletic director from Washington State called and said, "You're being used. You're stupid. Make sure you never run another day in any college if you run that race." Then the president of Washington State University called me and he threatened me. And then every 5 minutes, another NC2A coach or athletic director from someplace in the country would call me and tell me what a dirty person I was for going to run this race. Meanwhile, I had sprained my ankle running. I stepped in a hole and, did a number on my ankle. So I couldn't run at all.
Oh my.
I didn't know what to do. And I was all by myself at home and wondering what was happening and trying to get my foot so I could run on it. And my high school coach comes knocking on my door and laughs at me and says, "Boy, you really know how to get yourself in trouble."
No kidding.
And I said, "I don't know what to do because I'm not sure I can even run." And he said, "You have to think of why you run and you make the decision. I'm not going to tell you what to do." But I knew I had to go and try because that was it. I could either run the 5K or the 10K, or the 3 mile or the 6 mile they had. I chose the 6 mile because it was the last event and it was being late in the program, and maybe I'd give my foot a little more time to heal.
Wow.
So I decided to run the 6 mile. When I was warming up and trying to run without limping, Billy Mills comes running up to me, and he's always so full of enthusiasm and energy. And that's the least thing I wanted to be around was Billy Mills with all his energy. So I told him, "Billy Mills, I'm going for the world record today." Dad, because I wanted to shock him. Sure enough, it worked. He said, "Oh, really?" And he ran away. And so I could try to roar him up without limping for a while longer. Just before the race, he came up to me and he says, "I'll help you, Gerry. You take 2 laps and then I'll take 2 laps and we'll do this." And I said, "Okay, only for the first 5 miles then, because in the 6 mile you're on your own." He said, "Okay." And so that's how we started. The first 2 laps I led. And then when it was Billy Mills' time to lead, I moved out to lane 2 and let Billy Mills come zipping by on the inside. And he picked up the pace really tough because he was trying to be tough on me.
Right.
Uh, when it was my turn to lead again, surprisingly, as soon as the gun went off, my leg stopped hurting and I could run. It was completely gone. Amazing that way. But when it was my turn to run again, Willie Mills kept the inside and he made me run around the outside. And when I tried to get around, he picked it up a little bit so that I couldn't just get around. I had to sprint to get around him. And then when it was his time to turn again, I went out to lane 2 and he zipped by inside. And we went the whole first 4 miles that way. And I was
You, by then you
really
had
upset.
you were lapping people too. I mean, you guys were way
Yes.
ahead.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We were under world record base at the time.
Yeah.
And every 2 laps, we changed the lead. And he would pick it up every time because he was trying to hurt me. And I figured this out after about the fourth lap. So when it was my turn to lead again after 4 miles, I picked it up a little bit, and not a whole sprint because I didn't want to mess up our race pace, but I picked up a little bit, and when it was Billy Mills' time to come by, he didn't come by. So I know that I made some work of him. When we got to 5 miles, I thought, okay, this is the end of our helping each other, and I did a real sprint lap in around 62 seconds. When I got done with the race lap, I was going to go back into pace, and Billy Mills comes sprinting by me and did his own sprint lap. And it was everything I could do just to stay up with him. My God. We get to last 2 laps of the race, and we're running amazingly fast.
Yeah.
With 2 laps to go, I'm trying to get by him, and he's holding me off. And last lap, it's time for the sprint, and I'm sprinting, and he's holding me off all the way around to the last straightaway. Yeah. And I start to finally go by him on the straightaway, and I start thinking, no, Billy Mills is older. He'll retire soon. I shouldn't beat him. I should let him win. And I slowed down. And Billy Mills came back up on me, and he raced ahead of me. And I said, no, I have to make him work for it. And I took off after him so that when we went across the line, we were right together. Mills leaned. I was stupid and didn't know enough about racing, but I just went straight up. And I think that was the difference, is that he got his nose across before my chest went across.
Yeah, so
So
he
they
got
gave
credit
him
for
the
the
victory.
win. He got the credit for the win, but you both got
Yeah.
credit for the world record.
Yeah, they said we were like 3/100ths of a second difference, according to what they used the phototimer for the first time. But the phototimer was off anyway because the girl was waiting with the tape for the last lap bumped into the phototimer and knocked it over.
Oh my
And she
gosh.
picked it back up and put it back best she could.
Oh my gosh. It's an amazing scene to watch because you guys it seems like you guys are going so fast as you're lapping maybe for the second time people. They look like they're standing still on that sprint lap. It's just an amazing thing to watch. It's
Yeah,
very
it was.
enjoyable.
Yeah, it was a fun race. And afterwards, our legs are tired because they had one of these first all-purpose tracks, and it was very hard and hard on the legs.
That's it for part 1 with Gerry Lindgren. Great stories. There's so many more to tell. We'll be back with more in part 2. I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.